My name is Dorothea Williams, but everybody calls me Dot. I'm 64 years old, been a widow for 8 years now, and I work part-time in the church kitchen to make ends meet on my Social Security. Every dollar counts when you're living on $847 a month, so I count each one twice before I spend it. That Tuesday afternoon at the Walmart on Campbellton Road, I was standing in line with a chocolate birthday cake for my son Tommy's family dinner. $23 seemed like a lot for a cake, but it was his favorite, and I wanted to make a good impression on his wife Jasmine's family. Again. The cashier, an older black man with kind eyes, was scanning my items when my EBT card got declined. Not surprising since I only had $12 left on it for the month. I pulled out my envelope of cash money, the bills wrinkled from being folded and unfolded so many times as I counted and recounted my grocery budget. "Mrs. Williams," the cashier said quietly, reading my name off the declined card. "You're Thomas Williams's mama, right? The IT guy." I nodded, wondering how this stranger knew my Tommy. That's when he leaned forward, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "Ma'am, I need to tell you something about your daughter-in-law's family. They come in here every week spending hundreds of dollars on premium groceries, organic steaks, imported wine, fancy cheeses, always paying cash. And yesterday, Miguel Rodriguez was in here bragging about how your son sends them money every month, called it easy money." The words hit me like a slap across the face. Miguel, Jasmine's daddy, who supposedly couldn't find steady work. The same family that called Tommy crying about their utilities getting cut off just last week. My hands started trembling as I tried to process what this man was telling me. Something wasn't adding up, and I was about to find out exactly what that something was. I paid for my cake with shaking hands and walked toward the exit, my mind spinning like a washing machine on the fritz. But instead of heading to the parking lot where Tommy was waiting in his beat-up Toyota, I ducked around the side of the building near the shopping cart return area. If what Marcus the cashier had told me was true, I needed to see it with my own eyes. The late afternoon sun was beating down hard, and the smell of hot asphalt mixed with garbage from the nearby dumpsters made my stomach turn. But I had a clear view of the store entrance from where I was crouched behind a row of shopping carts. My knees were already aching from squatting down, but I wasn't moving until I got some answers. I didn't have to wait long. Not even 5 minutes passed before I saw Miguel Rodriguez walking out of the Walmart entrance, and my breath caught in my throat. This man was supposed to be struggling to find work, crying poor every time Jasmine called Tommy for money. But the Miguel I was looking at didn't look like he was struggling with anything. He was wearing brand new Air Jordans that I knew cost at least $200 because I'd seen Tommy looking at them online. His jeans looked crisp and expensive, not the kind you buy from the clearance rack at Walmart. And that watch on his wrist was definitely not something you pick up at the dollar store. But what really made my heart start pounding was what he was carrying. Multiple bags from the grocery section, but not regular Walmart bags. These were the special bags they use for their premium grocery pickup service, the kind that costs extra money that folks like me sure don't have. I watched him load those bags into the back of a shiny black Escalade with temporary dealer tags still taped to the back window. A brand new Cadillac Escalade. I knew those cars cost more than some people's houses. This was supposed to be the same family that couldn't afford their light bill. Miguel was talking on his phone, laughing and gesturing with his free hand, like he didn't have a care in the world. Not the body language of a man worried about putting food on his table or keeping the electricity on. I felt sick to my stomach. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy asking where I was, but I couldn't move yet. I watched Miguel end his call and walk around to the driver's side of that Escalade. The way he moved so relaxed and confident told me everything I needed to know. This was not a man worried about money. Just as he was about to get in his car, I heard voices approaching from my left. 2 women were walking toward their own vehicles, and when I heard one of them mention Jasmine's name, my ears perked up like a dog hearing a can opener. "Girl, did you see Jasmine at the nail salon yesterday?" the first woman was saying. She was about my age, wearing scrubs like she worked at a hospital. That girl had a full set with designs eyebrow threading the whole 9 yards. That's at least a $150 appointment right there. The other woman, younger, with her hair in a neat bun, shook her head. And last week I saw her at Lenox Mall coming out of Michael Kors with 3 shopping bags. My daughter works there and she told me Jasmine's a regular customer, always paying cash, never using a card. The first woman replied, loading groceries into her Honda. But didn't she just post on Facebook asking for prayers because they couldn't afford Miguel's prescription medicine, said they had to choose between his heart medication and groceries this month? My blood started to boil. Heart medication, Miguel didn't look like he had any health problems to me. And if they couldn't afford medicine, how are they affording luxury cars and designer purses? That's what I'm saying, the younger woman continued. Something ain't adding up. My neighbor lives 2 houses down from them, and she said there's always delivery trucks pulling up to their house. Fresh Direct, Whole Foods, even that expensive wine delivery service. That's not struggling family behavior. The 2 women got in their cars and drove away, but their conversation was echoing in my head. Fresh Direct deliveries, Whole Foods wine service. Meanwhile, Tommy was working 16-hour days and eating ramen noodles for dinner to save money so he could send Jasmine's family $500 every month. I felt my phone buzzing again. Another text from Tommy, probably wondering if I'd gotten lost in the store. I needed to get back to him, but first I had to process what I'd just witnessed. The evidence was right there in front of me, clear as day, but I knew Tommy would never believe it without proof. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. First, I got a clear shot of Miguel loading those expensive grocery bags into his Escalade. Then I zoomed in on the temporary dealer tags, making sure the date was visible. This car couldn't have been more than a week old. I even managed to get a photo of him through the windshield talking on what looked like the latest iPhone, smiling like he'd just won the lottery. My hands were shaking as I typed out a quick text to Tommy. Running into an old friend from church. Be right out, baby. Another lie to add to all the lies that were already swirling around our family. As Miguel drove away in his luxury SUV, I stayed hidden for a few more minutes, my mind racing. I needed more than just photos. I needed concrete proof that Tommy couldn't explain away with his generous heart and trusting nature. My son had always been the type to give people the benefit of the doubt sometimes to his own detriment. He'd find a way to rationalize what I'd seen. Maybe Miguel had gotten a bonus at work. Maybe the car was borrowed. Maybe those groceries were for a church function. That's when I remembered Marcus, the cashier, who'd started this whole revelation. He'd seen their spending habits week after week. He might have receipts, records, something solid that even Tommy couldn't dismiss. I walked back into the Walmart, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Marcus was finishing up with another customer, but when he saw me approaching his register, his expression grew serious. Mrs. Williams, he said quietly, I was hoping you'd come back. I've been wanting to tell someone in your family about this for months, but I didn't know how to reach you. What exactly have you seen? I asked, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. Marcus reached under his counter and pulled out a small notebook. I keep track of unusual customers, especially ones who seem to be living beyond their means. Your daughter-in-law's family, they've been coming here every Tuesday and Friday for the past 6 months. Always cash transactions, always premium items. Last week alone, Miguel spent $437 on groceries. $437 in one trip. That was more than half my monthly income. Do you have any proof of that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Marcus nodded and pulled out his phone. I take pictures of big cash purchases for our loss prevention reports. Look at this. He showed me the screen of his phone, and I nearly dropped my purse. There was a clear photo of a receipt with Miguel's name at the top, dated just 3 days ago. The total was $437.82. I could see line items for organic ribeye steaks, imported wine, fresh lobster tails, and specialty cheeses, the kind of groceries that Tommy and I could only dream about buying. Mrs. Williams, Marcus said, his voice filled with concern. This was the same day your daughter-in-law called the store asking if we had a payment plan for groceries because they were having financial troubles. She said her family was choosing between food and utilities this month. I felt dizzy. The fluorescent lights above us seemed too bright, and the sounds of the busy store faded into background noise. Jasmine had called this store pretending to be broke while her father was spending more on one grocery trip than I spent in 2 months. There's more. Marcus continued scrolling through his phone. Last month, Miguel was in here with another man showing off photos of some expensive fishing boat he'd just bought. Said his son-in-law was taking real good care of the family and they were living better than they ever had. A fishing boat? While Tommy was driving around in a 10-year-old Toyota with a broken air conditioner because he couldn't afford to fix it. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Marcus's expression softened. My own mama went through something similar with my sister and her husband. They took advantage of her kindness for years before someone finally opened her eyes. By then, she'd given them nearly everything she had. I promised myself that if I ever saw it happening to another family, I wouldn't stay quiet. He handed me a piece of paper with his phone number written on it. "If you need me to show this information to your son, I'm willing to do that. Sometimes the truth hurts, but lies hurt worse in the long run." I folded the paper carefully and put it in my purse, right next to the photos I'd taken of Miguel and his Escalade. My mind was already working, planning my next move. I couldn't just march home and dump this information on Tommy without being absolutely certain. He'd defend Jasmine and her family, make excuses for them, find reasons to doubt what I was telling him. I needed more evidence. I needed to see their lifestyle with my own eyes in their own home, where they couldn't hide behind convenient stories and lucky breaks. That's when I remembered that Tommy had mentioned visiting them for Sunday dinner this week. Sunday dinner was going to be very interesting indeed. I walked back to Tommy's car in a daze, my mind churning with everything I'd learned in the past 30 minutes. My son was sitting behind the wheel, scrolling through his phone, and when he looked up and saw me approaching, his face broke into that sweet smile that had been melting my heart since he was a baby. "There you are, Mama." I was starting to worry. "You feeling okay?" "You look a little pale." "Just tired, baby," I said, sliding into the passenger seat. "These old bones don't move as fast as they used to." As Tommy started the car, I studied his profile, the dark circles under his eyes that had become permanent fixtures over the past year, the way his work clothes hung a little looser on his frame because he'd been skipping meals to save money, the stress lines around his mouth that seemed to deepen every time Jasmine's family called with another emergency. "So we're still on for Sunday dinner at Jasmine's parents' house?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Yeah, Mama. Jasmine's excited for you to see how well they're doing, despite all their struggles. Miguel finally got some steady work, and they've been able to fix up the house a little bit. You know how proud he is. Wants to show off what they've accomplished." "I bet he does," I thought, remembering that shiny Escalade and those expensive grocery bags. "That's wonderful, Tommy. I'm looking forward to it." The 15-minute drive to my apartment gave me time to think. I needed a strategy. I couldn't just show up at Sunday dinner and start interrogating people or taking photos. I needed to be smart about this, observant but subtle. Let them hang themselves with their own lies. "Mama," Tommy said, as we pulled into my apartment complex, "I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me." My heart skipped a beat. Had he somehow sensed what I'd discovered? "What is it, baby?" "Jasmine mentioned that you seem a little distant lately when she calls. She's worried that you don't really approve of her family. I told her that wasn't true, but—" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. I took a deep breath. This was my chance to start planting seeds without revealing my hand completely. "Tommy, you know I want you to be happy. And if Jasmine makes you happy, then I'm happy. But as your mama, I can't help but notice how much you've been working lately. These 16-hour days, the weekend shifts. When's the last time you took a vacation? Or even a day off?" Tommy's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Mama, we've talked about this. Jasmine's family is going through a rough patch. They need our help right now. It's temporary." "How long has it been temporary, son? What do you mean? How long have they been going through this rough patch? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like there's been one emergency after another for the past 2 years. Tommy was quiet for a long moment. I could see him thinking, probably going through the timeline in his head for the first time. "It has been a lot of emergencies," he admitted slowly. "But that's just life, Mama. Sometimes things pile up all at once." I nodded, knowing this wasn't the time to push further. You're right, baby, and you're a good man for helping them. I'm proud of you for taking care of your family. But as I watched him drive away, I made myself a promise. By Sunday evening, my son was going to know exactly what kind of family he'd been taking care of. The next few days crawled by like molasses. I went through the motions of my regular routine, working my shift at the church kitchen, attending Wednesday night Bible study, doing my grocery shopping with coupons clipped from the Sunday paper. But my mind was somewhere else, entirely turning over everything I'd learned about Miguel and Jasmine's real lifestyle. Thursday evening, I got a call from Tommy that made my blood pressure spike. "Mama, I've got some bad news. Jasmine just called crying. Miguel needs to go to the emergency room. Something's wrong with his heart, and they don't have insurance to cover the full cost. They need $300 by tomorrow morning." I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles went white. His heart. Yeah, chest pains and shortness of breath. Jasmine's scared it might be serious. "I know I just sent them money last week, but this is an emergency, Mama. I can't let Miguel have a heart attack because they can't afford medical care." The same Miguel I'd watched loading luxury groceries into his brand new Escalade just 3 days ago. The same Miguel who owned an expensive fishing boat and was bragging about how well his son-in-law was taking care of him. "Tommy, baby, where are you planning to get $300? I already talked to my supervisor about picking up a double shift tomorrow, and I can work Saturday too. Between that and what I have in savings, I should be able to cover it." My heart broke. My son was going to work 32 hours straight to pay for a medical emergency that I was 99% sure was completely fake. "Have you talked to the hospital directly? Sometimes they have payment plans or charity programs." Jasmine said Miguel's too proud to ask for charity. He just wants to pay his bill and get the treatment he needs. Too proud for charity, but not too proud to lie to his son-in-law and take his hard-earned money. "Tommy, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Don't send that money tonight." "What, Mama, what are you talking about?" "Just wait until after we have dinner with them on Sunday. If Miguel's having a real medical emergency, it can wait 2 more days for the money. And if he's not—" I let the sentence hang in the air. "Mama, that doesn't make sense. If he's having heart problems, waiting could be dangerous. Then he should be in the hospital right now, not at home asking for cash payments." Tommy was quiet for a long moment. I could practically hear the wheels turning in his head, and for the first time in months, he seemed to be questioning the story he'd been told. "I guess that is kind of strange," he said slowly. "If it was really an emergency, they'd take him to the ER first and worry about payment later." "Exactly. Just promise me you won't send anything until Sunday. Can you do that for me?" Another pause. "Okay, Mama. I promise. But if Miguel ends up in the hospital this weekend, I'm going to feel terrible." "He's not going to end up in the hospital, baby. Trust me on that." After I hung up, I sat in my living room staring at the photos on my phone. Miguel looking healthy and happy as he loaded his expensive groceries, the temporary tags on his Escalade, the receipt showing $400 spent in one shopping trip. Sunday couldn't come fast enough. Saturday morning, I was getting ready for my shift at the church kitchen when my phone rang. It was Tommy, and his voice sounded different, tired but also confused. "Mama, something weird happened. I was worried about Miguel all night, so I called Jasmine this morning to check on him, asked if they'd taken him to the doctor yet. And she said he was feeling much better, that it was probably just stress and he didn't need to go to the emergency room after all. Just like that, the medical emergency disappeared." I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. "Is that right?" "Yeah, and when I offered to still send some money to help with any medical bills or follow-up care, she said they didn't need it anymore. Miguel's cousin had lent them some money instead." Of course he had, a convenient family member appearing out of nowhere right when their scam was about to fall apart. "How do you feel about that, Tommy?" There was a long pause. Honestly, Mama relieved about Miguel being okay, but also confused. Yesterday, it was a life-threatening emergency that needed $300 immediately. Today, it's nothing. That doesn't make sense to me. No, baby, it doesn't make sense. Because people don't recover from heart problems overnight. I keep thinking about what you said. If it was really an emergency, he would have gone to the hospital first and worried about money later. What kind of person waits for a cash payment when they think they're having a heart attack? I could hear the doubt creeping into his voice, and part of me felt bad for my son. It's never easy to realize that people you trust have been lying to you, but it was better for him to learn the truth now than to keep throwing away his money and his future. "Tommy, I want you to pay close attention tomorrow at dinner. Really look at how they're living. Notice the details." "What do you mean?" "Just observe, baby. Use those smart eyes of yours. You're an engineer. You're trained to notice when things don't add up. Apply that same logic to what you see at their house." When I hung up, I said a little prayer that my son would finally see what had been right in front of him all along. Sunday dinner was going to be the moment of truth, one way or another. I spent the rest of Saturday planning exactly what I was going to do. I charged my phone, fully cleared out space for more photos, and practiced looking casual while being observant. If Miguel and Jasmine wanted to put on a show, I was going to document every single detail of their performance. By Sunday morning, I was ready for war. Sunday morning came with that thick Georgia humidity that makes your clothes stick to your skin before you even step outside. I put on my best dress, a navy blue number I'd bought at the thrift store last year, and made sure my phone was fully charged and ready. Tommy picked me up at noon, looking handsome in his button-down shirt that I'd ironed for him the night before. "You excited to see how well they're doing, Mama?" he asked as we drove through their neighborhood. "Very excited, baby." When we pulled up to Miguel and Jasmine's house, I had to catch my breath. The last time I'd been here 6 months ago, the front yard had patchy grass and the paint was peeling around the windows. Now the lawn looked like something you'd see in a magazine with fresh sod and professional landscaping. The house had been completely repainted in a warm beige color, and there were new shutters on every window. "Wow," Tommy said. Miguel wasn't kidding when he said they'd been fixing the place up. "This looks amazing." I was already doing math in my head. Professional landscaping, a complete exterior paint job, new shutters. We were looking at thousands of dollars in home improvements for a family that supposedly couldn't afford their electric bill. Jasmine opened the front door before we even knocked, and I had to work hard to keep my expression neutral. The last time I'd seen my daughter-in-law, her hair had been in a simple ponytail, and she'd been wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Today, she looked like she'd just stepped out of a beauty magazine. Her hair was freshly done with expensive-looking highlights styled in loose curls that probably took 2 hours at a salon. Her nails were perfect acrylics with intricate designs that I knew cost at least $60. She was wearing a dress that still had creases from being folded like it was brand new, and her jewelry looked real, not the costume pieces she used to wear. "Mrs. Williams, Tommy," she exclaimed, giving us both hugs. Come in. We're so excited to show you everything." As we walked into the house, I felt like I was entering a completely different home. The old furniture I remembered was gone, replaced by a matching leather living room set that still had that new furniture smell. There was a massive flat-screen TV mounted on the wall at least 75 inches with a sound system that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Jasmine, this place looks incredible," Tommy said, spinning around to take it all in. "How did you guys manage to afford all these improvements?" "Oh, you know Miguel," she laughed, waving her hand dismissively. "He's been working extra shifts and picking up side jobs. Plus we found some amazing deals. This couch was 50% off, and the TV was a floor model." The miraculous deals again. But I was looking at price tags that were still stuck to some items, and these weren't clearance prices. This was full retail high-end furniture. "Miguel," Jasmine called toward the back of the house. "They're here." Miguel appeared from what looked like the kitchen, and I had to bite my tongue to keep from gasping. This was not a man who'd been having heart problems 2 days ago. He looked healthier and more relaxed than I'd ever seen him, wearing designer jeans and a polo shirt that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. "Tommy, welcome." He embraced both of us warmly. "Come see what we've been working on in the kitchen. We just finished a complete renovation." As he led us toward the back of the house, I caught Tommy's eye. He was looking around with a strange expression, like he was seeing something that didn't quite make sense to him. Good. Maybe he was finally starting to notice the inconsistencies. The kitchen took my breath away, but not in a good way. The kitchen was completely transformed. Granite countertops, stainless steel appliances that still had protective film on some of the handles, and a massive island with bar stools that looked like they belonged in a fancy restaurant. The refrigerator alone probably cost more than my car was worth. "This is beautiful, Miguel," Tommy said, running his hand along the granite. "This must have cost a fortune." "Well, you know how it is," Miguel replied with a proud grin. "Jasmine found a contractor who owed her cousin a favor. We got everything at cost, plus I did a lot of the labor myself to save money." I was taking mental notes of everything. The wine rack built into the island was stocked with bottles that I could see had price tags still on them. $50, $60, $80 per bottle. The kind of wine collection that takes months to build and thousands of dollars to stock. "Miguel, didn't you just have that heart scare on Thursday?" I asked innocently. "How are you feeling? It must be scary to think about health problems when you're doing all this physical renovation work." For just a split second, Miguel's smile faltered. I saw confusion flash across his face, like he'd forgotten which story he was supposed to be telling. "Oh, that," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Turned out to be nothing. Just stress. You know how it is when you're working so hard to provide for your family." "That's such a relief," Tommy said. "When Jasmine called Friday night, we were so worried. She said you needed $300 for emergency room treatment." Now Jasmine jumped in, and I watched her face carefully. "Actually, it was my cousin who was having the heart problems. I think there was some confusion when I called. Miguel's been fine." I looked at Tommy to see if he'd caught the lie. His brow was furrowed, and I could see him trying to process what he'd just heard. Jasmine had definitely said it was Miguel who needed medical care, not some cousin. "Let's sit down for dinner," Jasmine said quickly, clearly wanting to change the subject. "I made your favorite, Tommy, barbecue ribs and mac and cheese." As we moved to the dining room, I got a good look at the spread they'd prepared. This wasn't home cooking. This was catered food still in the aluminum containers from whatever restaurant they'd ordered from. Premium barbecue that probably cost $15 per pound, gourmet mac and cheese, expensive-looking sides. "Jasmine, this looks incredible," Tommy said, but his voice sounded different now. Less enthusiastic, more questioning. "Oh, you know me," she laughed nervously. "I've been practicing my cooking skills." But the containers still had labels on them from Heirloom Market BBQ, one of the most expensive barbecue joints in Atlanta. A meal like this for 4 people would have cost at least $150. As we sat down to eat, I noticed Tommy wasn't talking as much as usual. His engineer's mind was starting to work, adding up all the inconsistencies he was seeing. The expensive renovations, the luxury appliances, the catered food, Jasmine's salon fresh appearance, Miguel's miraculous recovery from heart problems that may or may not have been his own. I pulled out my phone pretending to check the time and snapped a few photos of the dining room and kitchen. The evidence was piling up, and soon I'd have enough to show Tommy exactly what kind of game his wife's family was playing with his money. The truth was about to come out whether they were ready for it or not. During dinner, I watched Tommy's face like a hawk. Every time Miguel or Jasmine mentioned another lucky break or incredible deal, I could see my son's expression getting more skeptical. When Miguel casually mentioned that he'd gotten the granite countertops for practically nothing from a friend in the business, Tommy actually set down his fork. "That's amazing luck," Tommy said slowly. "It seems like you guys know a lot of people willing to give you incredible discounts." "You know how it is," Jasmine said quickly. "When you're struggling, people want to help out however they can." But Tommy wasn't buying it anymore. I could see him looking around the room with new eyes calculating costs, adding up numbers that didn't make sense for a family that supposedly couldn't pay their utilities. That's when my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Marcus, the cashier from Walmart. "Mrs. Williams Miguel was just in here an hour ago. Spent $247 on steaks and wine. Thought you should know." An hour ago. While we'd been driving over here for Sunday dinner, Miguel had been at Walmart buying more premium groceries with cash. I showed the text to Tommy under the table. His face went white. "Excuse me," Tommy said, standing up abruptly. "I need to use the restroom." As soon as he left the room, I decided it was time to stop playing games. "Jasmine, honey, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Mrs. Williams." "How exactly has Miguel been affording all these home improvements while he's been unemployed?" Jasmine's smile became strained. "Like we said, he's been picking up odd jobs here and there, and we've been really lucky with finding deals. Lucky enough to afford a 75-inch TV, a complete kitchen renovation, new furniture, and weekly grocery trips that cost more than most people's rent." The color drained from Jasmine's face. Miguel stopped chewing. "Mrs. Williams, I don't know what you're implying, but we've been completely honest about our situation. Because I have photos of Miguel loading $400 worth of groceries into a brand new Escalade last Tuesday, the same day you called Tommy crying about not being able to afford electricity." The room went dead silent. That's when Tommy walked back in, and I could tell from his expression that he'd been doing some investigating of his own upstairs. "Jasmine," he said quietly, "why do you have shopping bags from Nordstrom and Saks Fifth Avenue hidden in your closet with the receipts still inside?" The jig was finally up. Jasmine's face went through about 5 different expressions in the span of 10 seconds. Shock, panic, anger, and then something that looked like relief mixed with resignation. "Tommy, baby, I can explain," she started, but her voice was shaking. "Explain what?" Tommy's voice was deadly calm, the way it gets when he's really angry, but trying to control himself. "Explain why you have $3,000 worth of designer clothes hidden in our bedroom while you're calling me crying about not having money for food." Miguel cleared his throat and tried to take control of the situation. "Son, I think there's been some misunderstanding here." "Don't call me son," Tommy snapped, turning to face his father-in-law. "And don't talk to me about misunderstandings. My mama has photos of you shopping at Walmart yesterday, spending hundreds of dollars, while my wife was supposedly worried about your heart condition." "Those photos could be from any time," Miguel said weakly. I pulled out my phone and showed him the timestamp. "Yesterday, 2:47 p.m., while Tommy was working a double shift to earn money for your fake medical emergency." Jasmine finally cracked. "Okay, fine. Yes, we've been spending money, but Tommy, you make good money, and we've been struggling for years before you came along. We deserve to live a little better." "Struggling?" Tommy's voice got louder. "Jasmine, your father drives a brand new Escalade. Your kitchen renovation cost more than I make in 6 months. This isn't living a little better, this is living off my hard work while lying to my face about it." "We never lied," Miguel protested. "We just didn't tell you about the good things that happened to us." "Like what good things?" I interjected. "Your mysterious job that pays well enough for luxury cars and designer clothes, but somehow you still need my son to send you $500 every month." The room fell silent, except for the sound of Jasmine sniffling. Tommy sat back down heavily in his chair and put his head in his hands. "How long has this been going on? And I want the truth this time." Jasmine looked at her father, then back at Tommy. "Since about 6 months after we got married." 2.5 years, Tommy said quietly. 2.5 years of fake emergencies and sob stories. "Tommy, please understand," Jasmine pleaded. "We saw how successful you were, how generous your heart is. We never meant for it to go this far." "How much?" Tommy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "How much money have I given you in total?" Miguel and Jasmine exchanged another look. "Miguel," I said firmly, "my son asked you a question." "Around $18,000. Miguel admitted quietly. The number hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. $18,000 that could have been Tommy's down payment on a house, his emergency fund, his future security. My son looked up at his wife with tears in his eyes. "Jasmine, I worked 16-hour days for you. I ate ramen noodles so I could send money to your family. I postponed everything I wanted in life because I thought the people I loved were suffering." "We do love you, Tommy," Jasmine said desperately. "No," Tommy said, standing up and grabbing my purse and his keys. "People who love you don't spend years lying to you and stealing from you. People who love you don't turn your generosity into their personal ATM machine." He looked around the room one more time, taking in all the luxury that had been purchased with his sacrifice and hard work. "We're done, Jasmine. Pack your things and move back in with your parents. You can afford to take care of her now, Miguel. You've been taking care of yourselves just fine with my money." And with that, we walked out of that house and never looked back. The drive back to my apartment was the longest 15 minutes of my life. Tommy didn't say a word, just gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. I could see tears running down his face, and my heart was breaking for my baby boy. When we finally pulled into my parking lot, he turned off the engine and just sat there staring straight ahead. "Mama," he said finally, his voice cracked and raw. "How did I not see it? How could I be so stupid?" "You're not stupid, Tommy. You're trusting. You're generous. Those are good qualities that bad people took advantage of." $18,000, Mama. $18,000 I gave them over 2.5 years. I could have bought a house with that money. I could have started a real future instead of working myself to death to fund their shopping sprees. He put his head down on the steering wheel and started crying harder than I'd seen him cry since he was a little boy. I reached over and rubbed his back the way I used to when he had nightmares. "Baby, listen to me. The money is gone and that hurts. But you know what would hurt more if this had gone on for another 2.5 years, or 5 years, or 10 years. At least now you know the truth." "But I married her mama. I stood up in church and promised to love and honor her, and she was planning to steal from me before we even finished our honeymoon." That thought made me angrier than anything else that had happened today. The calculated nature of it, the way they'd seen my kind-hearted son as nothing more than a source of income. "Tommy, what Jasmine and Miguel did to you wasn't love, and it wasn't marriage. It was a business arrangement where you were the only one who didn't know you were being used." We sat in silence for a few more minutes before Tommy finally lifted his head. "What do I do now, Mama? How do I trust anyone ever again? How do I know if someone actually loves me, or if they just see dollar signs?" "You start by being smarter without becoming bitter. You verify before you trust. You pay attention to actions instead of just words. And you remember that most people in this world are good, honest folks. Jasmine and Miguel don't represent everybody." "I need to call a lawyer tomorrow," he said, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. "Start divorce proceedings. Try to figure out if there's any way to recover some of that money." "That's a good plan, baby. And Tommy." "Yeah, Mama. I'm proud of you for walking away today. It takes strength to face the truth when the truth is painful." He gave me a weak smile. "I had a good teacher. If you hadn't shown me those photos, if you hadn't pushed me to really look at what was happening, I might have kept sending them money for years." That's what mamas are for, to protect their babies even when their babies are grown men who think they don't need protecting anymore. As I watched him drive away that night, I said a prayer that my son would heal from this betrayal and find someone who deserved his generous heart, someone who would love him for who he was, not what he could provide. The truth had set him free, but freedom always comes with a price. The next few weeks were like watching Tommy come back to life in slow motion. At first he was angry all the time. Angry at Jasmine, angry at Miguel, but mostly angry at himself for being what he called the biggest fool in Georgia. He threw himself into work even harder than before, but this time it wasn't to earn money for someone else's fake emergencies. He was building his own future dollar by dollar, paycheck by paycheck. Every Friday, instead of sending $500 to his lying wife's family, he put that money straight into his savings account. "Mama, look at this," he said during one of our weekly dinners at my apartment, showing me his bank statement on his phone. "I've saved more money in the past month than I did in the entire previous year. That's because you're finally working for yourself instead of for people who were using you." The divorce proceedings were messy, but straightforward. Jasmine tried to claim she deserved alimony, but when Tommy's lawyer presented evidence of the financial fraud, including all those photos and receipts I'd collected, her attorney advised her to take whatever settlement she could get and disappear quietly. Miguel tried calling me a few times, alternating between threats and pleading. First, he claimed he was going to sue us for defamation. Then he begged me to convince Tommy to take Jasmine back. Finally, he offered to pay back some of the money if we'd just keep quiet about what had happened. "Too late for all that," I told him during his last call. "You had 2.5 years to be honest with my son. Now you get to live with the consequences of your choices." The hardest part was watching Tommy struggle with trusting people again. For months, he questioned everyone's motives. When the waitress at our favorite restaurant was extra friendly, he wondered if she was just angling for a bigger tip. When a coworker invited him to a barbecue, he spent days analyzing whether there might be some hidden agenda. "Tommy, baby, you can't live your whole life suspecting everybody," I told him one evening as we sat on my porch watching the sunset. "Most people are good. Jasmine and Miguel are the exception, not the rule." "But how do I know the difference, Mama? I thought I knew Jasmine. I thought I understood her family's situation. I was completely wrong about everything." "You know by paying attention to actions instead of just words. You know by taking things slow and not rushing into anything. And you know by trusting your gut when something doesn't feel right, instead of making excuses for people who don't deserve them." It took almost a year, but gradually Tommy started to heal. He bought himself a reliable used car to replace that old Toyota. He moved into a nice one-bedroom apartment in a better part of town. He even started dating again, though very cautiously. That's when he met Keisha. Tommy met Keisha at the hospital when he had to get his appendix out. She was his night shift nurse, and from the first time I met her, I knew she was different from Jasmine in every way that mattered. First off, Keisha had her own car, her own apartment, and her own career. She'd been working as a registered nurse for 5 years and was saving up to go back to school for her nurse practitioner degree. When Tommy told me about her financial goals and her independence, I nearly cried with relief. "Mama, she actually split the check on our first date," he told me, grinning like he'd won the lottery. When I offered to pay for everything, she looked at me like I was crazy and said, "Why would you pay for my food when I have my own money?" The first time I met Keisha, she brought groceries to cook dinner for all 3 of us. Not expensive catered food like Jasmine used to do, but actual ingredients that she planned to turn into a meal with her own 2 hands. "Mrs. Williams," she said, as she unpacked chicken, vegetables, and spices in my kitchen. "I hope you don't mind, but I wanted to make my grandmother's recipe for you. Tommy's told me so much about your Sunday dinners, and I wanted to contribute something homemade." As I watched her season that chicken and chop those vegetables with practiced hands, I saw something in her that I'd never seen in Jasmine. Keisha wasn't performing for anyone. She wasn't trying to impress us or manipulate us. She was just being herself, a hard-working young woman who believed in earning her own way in life. "Keisha, honey, how long have you been living on your own?" I asked as she worked. "Since I was 19, she replied without hesitation. "Moved out of my mama's house as soon as I finished my nursing program. Been paying my own bills ever since. That's just how I was raised. You work for what you want, and you don't ask other people to carry your load." Tommy was watching her with such admiration, and I could see the healing happening in real time. This was what a real partnership looked like. 2 people bringing their own strengths to the table instead of one person carrying all the weight. 6 months into their relationship, Tommy brought up the subject of his previous marriage. I was worried about how Keisha would react to learning that her boyfriend had been financially taken advantage of for years. "So let me get this straight," she said, after Tommy finished explaining the whole story. "Your ex-wife and her family convinced you to send them money for fake emergencies, while they were living better than most people with real jobs." "Pretty much," Tommy said, looking embarrassed. "And they kept this up for 2.5 years. "Yeah." Keisha shook her head. "Tommy, baby, that wasn't your fault. That was them being professional con artists. You can't blame yourself for having a good heart." Then she turned to me. "Mrs. Williams, thank you for being brave enough to show him the truth. A lot of parents would have just minded their own business and let their child keep getting taken advantage of." "I couldn't stand by and watch my son work himself to death for people who were lying to him," I replied. "Well, I'm grateful you didn't, because if Tommy was still married to that woman, I never would have met him." That's when I knew Keisha was going to be part of our family for the long haul. Tommy and Keisha got engaged on a Tuesday evening in February. Nothing fancy or expensive. He proposed at my kitchen table after we'd finished eating leftover meatloaf, and Keisha cried happy tears while wearing her scrubs from her shift at the hospital. "Mrs. Williams," she said, still sniffling and admiring the simple but pretty ring on her finger, "I hope you know that I will never ask you or Tommy for money. I believe in working for what I need and being honest about what I can and can't afford." Those words meant more to me than any expensive wedding ring ever could. Their wedding was small and beautiful, held at our church, with about 50 people in attendance. Keisha paid for her own dress, insisted on contributing to the honeymoon fund, and even helped me make the decorations to save money. The whole celebration probably cost less than one of Miguel's grocery shopping trips, but it was filled with more genuine love and joy than I'd seen in years. "Mama," Tommy said as we danced to the last song of the evening, "thank you for saving my life." "I just did what any mama would do, baby." "No, you did more than that. You had the courage to tell me a truth I didn't want to hear. And because of that, I found someone who actually loves me for who I am, not what I can give her." 2 years later, Keisha gave birth to my first grandchild, a beautiful baby boy they named Marcus, after the cashier who'd first opened my eyes to the truth. When I held that little baby in my arms, I thought about all the money Tommy would have been sending to Jasmine's family if I hadn't spoken up. Money that now went toward Marcus's nursery, his college fund, and building a real future for a family built on honesty and mutual respect. "Grandmama Dot," Keisha said as she watched me rock little Marcus to sleep, "I want you to know that this baby is going to grow up knowing his grandfather Tommy's story. He's going to learn that kindness is a strength, but that wisdom protects kindness from being exploited." That's when I realized that the hardest decision I'd ever made, confronting my son with the truth about his wife's family, had led to the best outcome I could have imagined. Sometimes protecting the people you love means telling them truths they don't want to hear. Real family doesn't drain your resources, they build you up. When someone's love comes with a price tag, it ain't love at all. Trust your instincts, verify the facts, and never be afraid to speak up when something ain't right. The truth had set my son free, and freedom had given him the chance to build something real and lasting with someone who deserved his generous heart. As the years passed, I watched my son build the kind of life he'd always deserved. Tommy and Keisha bought their first house when little Marcus turned 2, a modest 3-bedroom place with a big backyard where my grandson could play safely. Every month, instead of sending money to people who didn't need it, they put that same amount into Marcus's college fund. "Mama," Tommy told me one Sunday as we watched Marcus chase butterflies in their new garden, "sometimes I think about how different things would be if you hadn't spoken up that day, if you'd just minded your own business and let me keep getting taken advantage of. Don't think about that, baby. Focus on what you have now." I am, but I also want to make sure other people don't go through what I went through. Keisha and I have been talking about starting a financial literacy program at the church. Help young couples learn how to protect themselves from family members who might try to take advantage of their generosity. That made my heart proud. My son had taken his painful experience and turned it into something that could help other people avoid the same trap. Marcus was walking now, babbling in that sweet way that toddlers do, and every time he called me Gamma Dot, my heart just melted. This little boy would grow up in a house where honesty was valued, where hard work was respected, and where love didn't come with hidden price tags. One afternoon, while I was babysitting Marcus, my phone rang. It was Jasmine. I hadn't heard from her in over 3 years, not since the divorce was finalized. "Mrs. Williams?" she said, her voice shaky and uncertain. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I needed to call you. What do you want, Jasmine? I wanted to apologize, and to thank you." That caught me off guard. "Thank me for what?" "For stopping us before we completely destroyed Tommy's life, and for showing me what real family loyalty looks like. After the divorce, after Miguel and I lost everything, when his get-rich-quick schemes fell apart, I finally understood what we'd done to your son." "What happened to you and your father?" "The house got foreclosed on when we couldn't keep up the payments without Tommy's money. Miguel's business ventures all failed. We had to move in with my aunt in Alabama, and I've been working at a diner trying to get back on my feet." I didn't feel sorry for them, but I didn't feel vindictive either. They'd made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. "Mrs. Williams is Tommy happy. He's very happy. He has a wife who loves him, a beautiful son, and a real future built on honest work and genuine partnership." There was silence on the other end of the line for a long moment. "Good," Jasmine said finally. He deserved better than what we gave him. I'm glad he found it. After I hung up, I looked at little Marcus playing with his blocks on my living room floor. This child would never know his father's first wife, would never be part of the drama and deception that had nearly derailed Tommy's life. He was growing up in the light, surrounded by people who chose truth over convenience and love over manipulation. That evening, when Tommy and Keisha came to pick up Marcus, I told them about Jasmine's call. "How do you feel about that baby?" I asked my son. Tommy thought for a moment as he helped Marcus put on his little jacket. "I feel sorry for her, but not responsible for her. She's an adult who made adult choices. I hope she figures out how to build an honest life for herself, but that's not my job anymore." "That's very mature of you." "I learned from the best teacher," he said, giving me a hug. As I watched them drive away that night, Tommy and Keisha laughing about something in the front seat, while Marcus babbled happily in his car seat, I felt a deep satisfaction. The truth I'd been brave enough to tell had given my family a real future built on solid ground instead of shifting sand. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's lies, even when the truth is painful for everyone involved. The story has reached a natural conclusion with Tommy's recovery, his new marriage to Keisha, the birth of their son Marcus, and even a redemptive phone call from Jasmine acknowledging her wrongs. The narrative arc is complete, from Dot's discovery of the financial deception to the family's healing and new beginning. Hit the like button if you believe that sometimes the most painful truths are also the most necessary ones, and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about ordinary people finding the courage to do extraordinary things for their families.